What happens when Hollywood's toughest action star loses his cool on daytime television's sweetest host? Last night on the Kelly Clarkson Show, Jason Momoa and Kelly Clarkson clashed in an argument so intense that security had to step in. It only took 41 seconds for a friendly conversation to explode into complete chaos. Before we get into this madness, hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations producers try to hide, and the drama that erupts when cameras are rolling. Last night's episode was supposed to be a celebration. Jason Momoa was there to talk about his environmental work and latest projects. The audience was excited, and Kelly seemed thrilled to have him. Everyone was expecting a fun interview. But within minutes, everything went sideways. Jason walked onto the stage to massive applause, that signature swagger and smile. He was wearing casual clothing, his long hair pulled back, looking relaxed. The audience was on their feet cheering. Kelly stood up to greet him with her trademark hug. They embraced and settled into their seats. "Jason, it's amazing to have you here," Kelly said. "I've been looking forward to this all week." "Thanks for having me, Kelly," Jason replied. "Always good to be here. Great energy in this place." They started with light conversation about his travels and funny movie set stories. Jason was animated, making the audience laugh. Kelly asked great follow-up questions. Everything was going perfectly. Then, Kelly shifted gears. She pulled out a note card. "So, I want to talk about your environmental work. You've been vocal about ocean conservation and reducing plastic waste. It's incredible work." Jason's face lit up at the mention of his environmental work. You could see the genuine passion in his eyes. He leaned forward, his voice becoming more intense. "Yeah, Kelly, it's everything to me. The ocean is literally dying right in front of us. We're killing it with our waste, with our negligence, with our refusal to change our habits even when we know better. Every day, we dump millions of tons of plastic into the ocean. Every day, marine life is dying because of what we're doing. And if we don't do something now, right now, there won't be anything left for our kids." The audience was nodding, clearly moved. Kelly was nodding too, her expression sympathetic. "That's so important, Jason," Kelly said warmly. "I think a lot of people hear about these issues but feel helpless. Seeing someone like you dedicating yourself to this cause inspires people to take action." Jason nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. That's what I want. Every action matters. Every piece of plastic you don't use matters. We can't just wait for governments or corporations to fix this. We have to take responsibility ourselves." Kelly was still nodding, but then her expression shifted slightly. She glanced down at her note card again. "And I think it's great that you're bringing attention to these issues. But I do want to ask you something, Jason, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way. Some environmental activists and journalists have pointed out that while you talk about environmental protection, you also travel extensively on private jets. You've promoted products that use single-use plastics. You've been part of productions with significant carbon footprints. How do you square that circle?" The change in Jason's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. It was like watching a switch flip. His smile completely faded, vanishing in an instant. His eyes, which had been bright and animated seconds before, went cold. His body language shifted from relaxed and open to tense and guarded. His jaw clenched visibly. His hands, which had been gesturing freely as he spoke about his passion, now gripped the armrests of his chair. The audience, which had been so warm and engaged just moments before, went completely quiet. You could feel the energy in the room change, like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in a single second. People in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that something had just fundamentally changed in the atmosphere. "Excuse me?" Jason said slowly, his voice low and careful, each word deliberate. "What exactly are you trying to say, Kelly?" Kelly's eyes widened slightly. She seemed to realize she'd hit a nerve, touched on something sensitive, but instead of backing off or changing course, she pressed forward. Maybe she thought she could navigate through it. Maybe she thought she was asking a legitimate journalistic question. Maybe she thought Jason would give a thoughtful response that would make for good television. Whatever she was thinking, she made the decision to keep going. "I'm not trying to attack you, Jason. Please don't take it that way," Kelly said. And her voice was still friendly, but there was definitely an edge creeping in now. A defensiveness starting to build. "I'm really not. I'm just asking a legitimate question that a lot of people who care about these issues, have raised publicly. You're a very visible advocate for environmental protection, which is wonderful and important. But there seems to be, at least from an outside perspective, a disconnect between what you advocate for publicly and how you live your private life. And I think people just want to understand how you think about that." Jason leaned forward in his chair, his impressive frame somehow seeming even larger. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on Kelly's. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but you could hear the frustration building underneath. "A disconnect? You think there's a disconnect in my life?" He shook his head slowly. "Kelly, I've dedicated years of my life to this cause. Not days, not months, but years. I've used my platform, my fame, my money, everything I have, to bring attention to issues that most people completely ignore. I've personally funded projects to clean up ocean waste. I've worked directly with conservation organizations on the ground, doing actual physical work. I've lobbied governments. I've met with world leaders. I've actually put my money and my time where my mouth is. So when you sit there and suggest there's a disconnect, that bothers me. That really bothers me. I understand. And I'm not saying you haven't done good work," Kelly responded, but her tone was becoming more defensive now. You could see it in her posture too, sitting up straighter, her shoulders tensing. "Nobody's questioning that you care about these issues. But I'm just pointing out what environmental journalists and activists have mentioned in their coverage. That sometimes there appears to be a gap between the environmental message and the reality of how that message is delivered. And I think that's a fair thing to bring up." "Critics," Jason said, and the way he said the word made it sound like an insult. There was clear frustration, maybe even anger, in his voice now. The friendly, relaxed movie star from 10 minutes ago was gone completely. "You mean people on social media who don't know a damn thing about my life? People who see one photo of me on a plane, one single photo, and decide they know everything about my carbon footprint, about my impact, about my entire lifestyle?" The tension in the studio was building rapidly now, like a pressure cooker getting close to exploding. You could see it on people's faces in the audience. Mouths hanging open, eyes wide, people glancing at each other nervously. Kelly's band members in the background looking uncomfortable, not sure if they should do something or just stay quiet. Kelly's usual warmth and cheerfulness was being replaced by something more defensive, more combative. "Jason, I think that's a bit unfair to characterize it that way," Kelly said, and now she was sitting up even straighter in her chair, her hands gesturing as she spoke. "These aren't just random trolls on the internet making things up. These are environmental journalists who cover climate issues professionally. These are activists who've devoted their entire lives to this work. People who work in this space every single day have raised valid concerns about celebrity activism in general, and whether it's genuine commitment or whether it's just for show, just for image management." That last phrase dropped like a bomb. "Just for show?" Jason's voice got noticeably louder, echoing through the studio in a way that made several audience members physically flinch. "You think what I do is just for show? You think I talk about the ocean dying, about species going extinct, about our children inheriting a destroyed planet? You think I do all of that for publicity? For my image?" "That's not what I said, Jason," Kelly shot back, and now she was getting clearly defensive too, her voice rising to match his intensity. Her face was flushing red. "Don't put words in my mouth. Don't twist what I'm saying. I asked a question. A fair question. If you're going to be a major public figure who advocates for environmental causes, who tells millions of people how they should live their lives, You have to expect that people are going to look at your own practices. You have to expect scrutiny. That's part of the responsibility that comes with the platform you have. And I've answered this question 100 times, Kelly. 100 times. Jason's frustration was clearly mounting with every word. His voice was getting louder, his gestures more emphatic. Yes, I travel for work. Yes, I'm in movies. Yes, I'm part of an industry that has environmental impacts. I'm not hiding from that. I'm not pretending that's not true. But I'm also actively working to reduce that impact, to offset it, to use my position to create real, tangible change in the world. I'm trying to make the system better from inside the system. What are you doing, Kelly? What's your carbon footprint? How many flights do you take? How much waste does this show produce every single day? How much electricity does this studio use? Should we talk about that? The audience gasped audibly at that turn. Jason had just flipped the entire conversation, putting Kelly directly on the defensive, calling her out, and you could see it hit home hard. Kelly's face flushed even deeper, a darker shade of red. Her eyes widened in surprise and anger. Her mouth opened slightly in shock. This interview isn't about me, Jason, Kelly said, and her voice was getting sharper now, taking on an edge that people who watch her show regularly have rarely, if ever, heard. This isn't about my life or my choices. I'm not the one out there positioning myself as an environmental crusader to millions of followers. I'm not the one with a massive platform telling people how to live their lives while potentially, and I say potentially, not following my own advice. There's a word for that, and I think you know what it is. Potentially. Jason stood up now, and his impressive frame, his sheer physical presence, made him tower over the entire set. Several people in the audience actually leaned back in their seats instinctively. What the hell does that mean? What does potentially mean? You don't know what I do behind closed doors. You don't know the hours I spend working with organizations. You don't know the money I personally donate, and I'm not talking about tax write-offs. I'm talking about real money that actually makes a difference. You don't know the work I put in when there are no cameras around, when there's nobody watching, when I can't get any credit for it. You're sitting here in your talk show chair, making judgments based on what? Some hit piece article someone wrote to get clicks? Some Twitter thread from people who've never met me? Kelly stood up too now, refusing to be intimidated, not backing down even an inch. She might be smaller physically, but she was matching his energy. I'm asking questions based on documented reports, Jason. Reports from credible sources. Reports that show extensive private jet usage for trips that could be done commercially. Reports that show endorsement deals with companies that have highly questionable environmental records. These aren't made up. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are documented facts. Facts? Jason's voice was booming now, absolutely filling every corner of the studio, bouncing off the walls, probably being heard clearly in the hallways outside. You want to talk about facts? Let's talk about facts, Kelly. Real facts. Let's talk about how I've personally funded the removal of thousands of tons of plastic from the ocean. Let's talk about how I've lobbied governments around the world to change their environmental policies. Let's talk about the communities I've worked with directly. Indigenous communities who are being destroyed by climate change, and how I've helped them get resources and attention. Let's talk about real, measurable impact. Not just what looks good for your ratings or makes for a dramatic moment on your show. My ratings? Kelly's voice cracked with genuine anger now, her composure really starting to slip. Are you serious right now? Are you actually serious? I invited you here in good faith, Jason. In good faith. To talk about your work. To give you a platform to discuss these issues you claim to care so much about. And you're standing here accusing me of doing this for ratings? I asked one legitimate question. One question that any responsible journalist would ask someone in your position. And you're acting like I committed some terrible crime. Journalist? Jason laughed. But it was a bitter, harsh sound with absolutely no humor in it. You're not a journalist, Kelly. Let's be very clear about that. You're a talk show host. There's a big, big difference. Journalists do actual research. They understand context and nuance. They don't just read questions off note cards that were written by producers who are looking to create controversy, looking to get a viral moment that they can clip and post online. The audience was completely dead silent now. Not a single sound. Some people looked genuinely shocked, their hands over their mouths. Others looked scared, like they'd accidentally stumbled into something they shouldn't be witnessing. A few people looked angry on Kelly's behalf. This had escalated far, far beyond a normal disagreement on a talk show. This was deeply personal now, and everyone in the building could feel it. Kelly's hands were shaking noticeably now, visibly trembling in a way the cameras were definitely catching. Her face was a deep shade of red, a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and genuine hurt, all rolled together into one raw expression. Her eyes were starting to get watery, tears threatening to spill over. How dare you come on my show and insult me like this? How dare you question my integrity, my professionalism, everything I've worked for? I've built this show from absolutely nothing, from the ground up, on honesty, on having real, authentic conversations with real people, on not being afraid to ask the hard questions that need to be asked, even when they're uncomfortable. And you're standing here in my studio acting like I'm some kind of villain for doing my job, for being a responsible host. Hard questions? Jason shook his head slowly, deliberately, his voice absolutely dripping with sarcasm now. Every word was loaded with contempt. You want to ask hard questions? You really, truly want to have that conversation? Then ask me about the actual concrete work I'm doing. Ask me about the specific legislation I've helped get passed in multiple countries. Ask me about the communities I've worked with directly and how their lives have actually measurably improved. Ask me about the impact my foundation has had, the numbers, the real data. Don't sit there in your comfortable chair and try to play gotcha. Journalism, because someone on Twitter, some random person who's never met me, posted a photo of me on a plane. That's not journalism, Kelly. That's not even close to what journalism should be. This isn't gotcha journalism. Kelly's voice was at absolute full volume now, as loud as anyone had probably ever heard her speak on her show. She wasn't holding back anymore. All pretense of television politeness completely gone. This is accountability. This is what accountability looks like when you actually care about truth. Something that people in your position, people with your level of fame and influence and power, desperately need to accept and embrace. You can't just use your massive celebrity status to preach about important issues to millions of people and then get defensive and angry and hostile when someone, anyone, has the courage to ask if you're actually living by those same exact standards you're pushing on everyone else. That's not how any of this works. That's not how it should work. I do live by those standards, Jason fired back immediately, not missing even a fraction of a beat. Every single day of my life, Kelly. But I'm also human. I'm a human being, living in the real world, not in some fantasy land. I work in an industry that requires extensive travel across the globe. I have commitments to studios, to crews, to projects that employ thousands of people. I have obligations. I have responsibilities that I take seriously. I make compromises sometimes, difficult compromises, because that's how you actually get things done in the real world. Not by being perfect and pure and never leaving your house or never participating in society, but by working within the system to try to change the system from the inside. That's reality. That's how change actually happens. Nobody's asking for perfection, Kelly said, but her voice was strained now, cracking with emotion that was very clear and very raw. You could see how much this was affecting her. Nobody in their right mind expects you to be perfect. We're asking for consistency between your words and your actions. We're asking for honesty and transparency. We're asking for authenticity in how you present yourself. And when someone, When a journalist, or an activist, or just a concerned citizen who cares about these issues points out legitimate inconsistencies or asks valid, important questions, we're asking for a better, more thoughtful response than getting defensive and attacking the person asking the question. That's all we're asking for, Jason. Just basic honesty. I never said mind your own business, Jason countered sharply, his voice cutting through the tension. What I'm saying, what I'm desperately trying to make you understand, is that you clearly don't understand the incredible complexity of what I'm trying to accomplish here. You're taking something that's incredibly nuanced and complicated, something with a million moving parts, and reducing it to a simple, black and white narrative that fits neatly into your show's format, that makes for good television segments. And that's complete bullshit, Kelly. That's absolute bullshit, and you know it. Kelly's eyes went wide at the profanity, her mouth opening in shock. Several audience members gasped loudly again, some even standing up slightly in their seats. "Watch your language," she said firmly, pointing a finger directly at him with a shaking hand. "This is daytime television. There are families watching. There are children at home right now watching this show. You can't just curse whenever you feel like it." "Oh, now you suddenly care about standards?" Jason interrupted her, his voice heavy with thick sarcasm. "Now you care about what's appropriate for television? You don't care about ambushing your guest with loaded questions that are specifically designed to make them look bad, to put them in an impossible position, but you care about me saying one single bad word? You care about language, but not about fairness or truth or context? That's interesting. That's really, really interesting, and honestly pretty revealing about your priorities." "I didn't ambush you!" Kelly's voice was shaking violently with anger now, and there were actual tears forming in her eyes, pooling up and threatening to spill over, though she was clearly fighting with everything she had to hold them back. "I did not ambush you, Jason. That's not what happened here. I asked a question that needed to be asked, a question that millions of people want answered, that they deserve to have answered. If you can't handle that, if you can't handle someone challenging your narrative, someone asking you to account for the obvious contradictions between what you say and what you do, then maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Maybe you should just stick to posting on social media, where you can control absolutely everything, and nobody can ever question you or push back." "Maybe shouldn't," Jason said, and his voice was suddenly cold, controlled in a way that was somehow even more intense and intimidating than when he was yelling. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Maybe I shouldn't be here at all. Maybe coming on this show was a huge mistake. Because clearly this entire thing wasn't about having a real, substantive conversation about issues that matter. This wasn't about discussing climate change or ocean conservation or any of the work I'm actually doing. This was about creating a dramatic moment for your show, getting a viral clip that will be all over social media and entertainment websites by tonight, making me look like a hypocrite, so your producers can celebrate their ratings, win tomorrow morning." "That's not true," Kelly said, but there was noticeably less conviction in her voice now. The confidence was cracking. "That's not what this is about at all." "Really?" Jason looked directly at the cameras, his gaze intense and unwavering, then snapped back to Kelly. "Because it feels exactly like you invited me here specifically to put me on blast, to make an example of me. Did you ask your producers how much plastic waste this show generates every single week? Did you ask yourself why you're going after me, someone who's actually trying to do something, instead of the massive corporations that are actually destroying the planet for profit? Or was I just an easy target because I'm here and they're not?" Kelly's composure was completely cracking now, falling apart in real time. You could see tears forming in her eyes, whether from anger or frustration or embarrassment or all three. "You're being completely unfair to me. You're twisting everything I'm saying, putting words in my mouth. I'm being unfair?" Jason's voice was incredulous, almost laughing at the accusation. "You started this entire thing, Kelly. You came at me with accusations thinly disguised as questions. You set this up. Don't act shocked and surprised when I defend myself and push back. They weren't accusations, Kelly insisted, but her voice was wavering badly now, losing strength. They were legitimate questions. Valid questions that deserve thoughtful answers. And I tried to answer them, Jason said, gesturing emphatically with his hands. But you didn't want real answers. You wanted sound bites. You wanted drama for your show. You wanted your viral moment. Congratulations, Kelly. You got exactly what you wanted. The audience was completely frozen, witnessing this absolute meltdown happening in real time right in front of them. Several people had their hands covering their mouths in shock. Others were already recording on their phones, despite the strict rules against it. Kelly took a deep, shaky breath, clearly trying desperately to regain some composure, to salvage something from this disaster. Jason, I think we really need to take a commercial break right now. Let's just calm down for a minute and— No, Jason interrupted firmly, his voice like steel. Absolutely not. We're not taking a break. We're done here. This interview is completely over. Jason, please, Kelly said. And now there were actual tears streaming down her face, her makeup starting to run. Let's just talk about this like adults. We can move on to something else. We don't have to. I said we're done, Jason repeated firmly, already reaching for his microphone and starting to remove it. His fingers worked quickly, efficiently. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked on your show in front of millions of people. I'm not going to let you twist my work, my passion, everything I care about, into some kind of manufactured controversy designed for your viewers' entertainment. Kelly turned desperately to her producers off camera, her eyes pleading, clearly panicking about how to handle this unprecedented situation. Can we please just take a commercial break? We need to cut to commercial. We can figure this out during the break. There's nothing to figure out, Jason said coldly, pulling the microphone completely off and dropping it onto his chair, where it landed with a dull thud. I came here in good faith to talk about real issues, about things that actually matter to the future of this planet, and instead I got ambushed with tabloid nonsense and gotcha questions. I'm leaving. This is over. Jason, wait, please, Kelly called out, her voice breaking as she reached toward him with both hands, but he was already moving, already walking with determined strides toward the stage exit. His footsteps echoed loudly through the completely silent studio, each one seeming to punctuate the disaster that had just unfolded. The audience didn't make a single sound. Even the band members seemed frozen in complete shock, their instruments forgotten. Kelly stood there in the middle of her own stage, tears streaming freely down her face now, mascara running, watching helplessly as one of Hollywood's biggest stars walked out on her show, walked away from her, leaving her standing there alone. Her hands were trembling visibly, her breathing heavy and uneven. This was completely unlike anything that had ever happened on her show before. This wasn't supposed to happen here. Jason stopped just before disappearing through the exit, pausing at the threshold. He turned back one final time, and the entire studio held its breath. His voice, when he spoke, was measured but carried incredible intensity that filled every corner of the room. You know what the real problem is, Kelly? The real problem with all of this? He paused, letting the question hang in the air. People like you, people with platforms and voices and influence, you would rather tear down people who are actually trying to help, who are actually doing something, than focus your energy on the real villains. You'd rather get your dramatic moment, your viral clip that will be shared 1,000,000 times, than actually use your platform to make a real difference in the world. That's what's wrong with all of this. That's what's destroying any chance we have of actually fixing things. And with those final devastating words hanging in the air like smoke, Jason Momoa turned and walked off the Kelly Clarkson Show. He disappeared through the exit, and the heavy door closed behind him with a solid, final thunk. The camera held on Kelly's face as she stood there, frozen, tears still flowing, trying desperately to compose herself, and failing completely. Her mouth opened as if to say something, But no words came out. She looked absolutely shattered.